There are also many other campuses that also house our business school, like the MBA programs, the Graduate School of Education and Psychology, where we have MA and PhD programs in education and psychology. We have a business school, a law school, so we have many different campuses. Where I work, I'm working with face-to-face undergrads. We have very little to almost none, hybrid type of courses on the main campus. I'm dealing with undergraduates. Yet in the graduate programs, we do have online programs, and some hybrid courses are starting to come up more and more. But that gives you some context of our schools. So today I'm going to tell you what we're going to cover in our agenda for our program. There are three things that we're going to cover today. Number one is we're going to talk to you about how we came to choose Sakai, what was involved in us choosing Sakai as an institution, what features were we lured to in Sakai. Number two, we're going to talk about getting started in Sakai. How did we get started? So this is an image of, if you've ever bought furniture from IKEA and you get like a box full of instructions in Dutch or something like that, but how do you unpack those instructions? How do you unpack Sakai and start using it? So we're going to talk about getting started in Sakai. And then lastly, like raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright big blue buttons for courses I've written, lots of great teaching tools tied up in code. These are the stories of our Sakai road. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about my favorite things. Hopefully you understood that I was trying to mimic Julie Andrews there in The Sound of Music. But we're going to talk to you about some of our favorite things in Sakai, which I think will be helpful if you're working with faculty, because faculty want to know what's helpful. Especially when you're starting out, there's a lot of tools, and faculty want to know what should they use in their courses, right? So those are the three things that we'll tackle today. Choosing Sakai, getting started, and what were our favorite things in Sakai. Before we tackle those things, I don't know how you feel with Sakai. Some of you I know are familiar faces, but some of you might be brand new, like Susanna, right, to Sakai. And you might have some questions, because when we first came to the Sakai conference many years ago, we had a lot of questions. So I'm going to share with you some basic questions we had about Sakai that might help you understand it a little bit, okay? We had questions like, where did Sakai come from? How did Sakai come into being? What does Sakai mean? Because that's something that, it's not a familiar word. So what does Sakai mean? How do you pronounce Sakai? And what does Sakai, the platform, look like? Because if you've never seen it and you just have heard about it, we came when we first started piloting Sakai, and many of the faculty had never even seen the interface. So I'm going to answer some of these questions, and then we'll get into how to get started in Sakai. So where does it come from? If you didn't know, Sakai started from 4 of these institutions. They all came together. They all had LMS systems. The majority of the content came from University of Michigan, which had an LMS that was called Chef, and that comprised the majority of the Sakai LMS interface. So from that, they came up with the name Sakai because the Chef system took up the majority of the contribution to Sakai. If you'll see, those 4 institutions, if you heard from this morning as well, have now launched this project that is being used all throughout the world. And so if you look on a map, you'll see over 300 institutions are now using Sakai after being formed from just those 4. And remember when I told you that Chef comprised the majority of Sakai? And so they named it after Chef Hiroyuki Sakai, who is one of the Iron Chefs, right, from Food Network. If any of you have watched any food cooking shows, there's a show called Iron Chef. And Hiroyuki Sakai is a chef that they named Sakai after. That's a little Sakai trivia that not everybody knows. So see here, hopefully you've learned something, right? How do you pronounce it? Everyone, I've heard everything from Saki to Sakai, but we say Sakai. So Sakai is how you would pronounce it. And then why Apereo? Where did Apereo come from? Well, Sig and Sakai joined forces, these two foundations, and they wanted to name something unique, a label for Sakai, a branding. And they took the two Latin words, aperto and merio, which mean open merit, which is a great name for Sakai because these two foundations came together. They took two different words, merged them together. It's an open source tool that it also merits. I looked at meritocracy, and it's basically a group of talented people coming together. So it's an open source where a group of talented people have come together to share with the world this great resource. So that's some trivia about where Sakai came from. Most important to all of you is, what does Sakai look like? When I came to my first Sakai conference, remember, we're all from different basic roles in our institutions. And it was kind of funny this morning, actually, we sat down to talk to another group of people. And I don't know if you realize this, but faculty look at Sakai very differently than like an instructional technologist versus a designer and so forth, right? And sometimes we don't understand what you all are saying because we're faculty, and sometimes you all don't understand what we're saying. And so one of my colleagues asked somebody what web conference tool they used this morning. And the other person looked at him like, I don't know what you're saying, right? And then they asked us a question, and we looked at him like, what are you saying? And we're all speaking English. We just didn't understand each other because we all use a different language. And so let's get down to what does Sakai look like, because that will help us all be kind of on the same playing field in terms of what we do. Okay, so when I first came to Sakai, we were coming from Blackboard, all of you who are out there who are using Blackboard and maybe migrating to Sakai. So as faculty, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm just going to speak upon all the faculty of the world right now and tell you that we don't like change. Do you know that? Yeah. So we, like, coming from Blackboard and hearing about this Sakai, okay, number one, it's a word that we don't understand. What is Sakai, right? We're comfortable with Blackboard. Now you're asking us to move our whole course to Sakai. What does that look like? Well, when I first went on to the Sakai platform versus comparing it to our Blackboard platform, it looked very similar to Blackboard. If you notice on the left-hand side, there's a menu for my course, from syllabus all the way down to assignments or grades. And then on the top, I have a list of all my courses. So once I saw that as a faculty member, and this is something, if you're training faculty, it really lowered my level of concern. Because I thought, okay, I got that. I got the left panel straight across the tabs. I understand that. So something to just ease the level of concern of faculty is just, what does Sakai look like? Just to show you here, this is our home page when we log in. Alan and his team have done a great job at showing us faculty tutorials are right there, student tutorials are right on the home page when you log into Pepperdine's Sakai system. Then when you dig deeper into a course, this is what one of my courses looks like when you log in. I've customized the home page to have my course title across the top. This is a picture of my students. We visited a local school, so I put the picture of them on the home page. And now I've also customized my left-hand navigation panel. So this is one of my courses. This is just another course, so you can see the same idea. I have a picture of one of my groups, and then I put the description of the class underneath. And then you can see on the left-hand side, now my navigation panel looks different. It's a little longer. I've added California state standards for my teachers, different links that I think they'll use a lot. So you can customize that panel, and that's very helpful for faculty. So that's what it looks like. So now we've answered some questions about Sakai. Let's get into how to get started using Sakai. These are some fundamental buttons when you're teaching faculty how to use Sakai that will help them greatly as they get started. So in getting started, let me show you two magical buttons on our Sakai interface at Pepperdine that have helped faculty a great deal. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll see my navigation panel. But does anyone see something different with one of the buttons on the left-hand side? Does something stick out to you that's not the same as the rest of the buttons? Anyone see that? Leo sees that, right? What do you notice, Leo, in the left-hand column?
One is red.
Yeah, one is actually a different color, right? Does everyone see that? Our school colors are blue and orange, go Waves. And so, so we have blue at the top, and orange sticks out. And I don't know if you know this about fast food restaurants, but did you know like red, yellow, orange really attract the eye? That's why Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy has red hair, Taco Bell, all of those are attracted to the eye. So orange sticks out. And so that is the magical Site Info button. That Site Info button on the left-hand side will give me access to a lot of tools to customize my panel. Now, those of you out there who are creating and designing Sakai for your faculty, something as simple as color will make a huge difference and will diminish the number of tech phone calls that you will deal with, I promise you, okay? Because you can just click on that orange Site Info button, it sticks out. Another button is on the right-hand side, right above. Now you see here, I have a Wordle, a word cloud, instead of a picture of my class. So to customize that main page, there's a rich content editor, which is where the yellow arrow points to. So faculty are advised to use that little pen and paper icon to click so that they can add something different, like a picture or the course description. So the small icon in the yellow that's pointing to the yellow arrow, that's how to customize your course. And then the left arrow is the Site Info button, which is the magic button to the land of great things in Sakai. Okay. Something that the Technology and Learning Group has done, which is going to be really helpful, I think, to institutions like Wake Forest, is they've put together under the faculty tutorials this great list of tools. So they've categorized it into topics like getting started, or collaboration, or communication, or assessment. So if I know that I want to do something with assessment in Sakai, I can go to this faculty tutorial and click a button to see all the tools that deal with assessment. So the Tech Learning Group has done a great job with the tutorials and housing that to show you the different tools available. When you hit that Site Info button, one of the main buttons on that menu, which all the faculty will need to know, is Edit Tools. Edit Tools is the button that faculty want to know to customize that left-hand panel. Remember when I have assignments or grades or resources. So this Edit Tools button will give you the menu for all the tools in Sakai. That's what faculty, I think that's what faculty want to know. Because if I'm not going to use forums, I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to uncheck that. If I don't use assignments, you can use Sakai and not use assignments. Just uncheck that button. So again, Site Info and then Edit Tools. Question?
Well, comment and question maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Because we have some tools pre-selected.
Okay.
And I have the hardest time getting faculty to uncheck the ones they don't want to use and check the ones they do want to use. We just did a survey and got all kinds of complaints about Dropbox because they would put an assignment in the assignments tool, but the kids would turn it in Dropbox. So, you know.
Yeah.
We turned off the Dropbox as a default.
Well, we're doing an upgrade, and I'm basically turning everything off by default. So they have to pick.
They have to pick their own. Yeah. So the question is, or the comment about, getting faculty to check or uncheck their boxes. Right. And I think a lot of it too on the faculty's end, just to take one for the faculty, is they need to instruct their students how to use this.
Sure.
Because I feel like a lot of faculty just assume, especially with undergraduates, I'm dealing with undergraduates, they just assume that students know how to use Sakai. They've just stepped foot on their campus. They're not worried about Sakai. They're living away from their mom and dad for the first time. That's awesome. They're not thinking of Sakai, right? So I think professors need to stop and say, if they're doing an assignment, to say like, okay, so this is how you would submit the assignment. And we'll get into like Dropbox a little bit later. But yeah, Alan, did you want to talk about or address faculty checking or unchecking?
Yeah, we went back and forth, so we still have some default tools based on the most popular ones. But yeah, we turned off Dropbox. We actually got a great suggestion from NYU the other day is rename it from Dropbox to, I think they chose File Locker or something, you know, basically because there was so much confusion between Dropbox.com
Yes,
and Dropbox.
Yep.
And so they just renamed the Sakai tool to eliminate that confusion. And that seemed to be a great win for NYU. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's a great suggestion. Okay, so then edit tools is how they would select their tool. And at Pepperdine, something we do have is before a class goes live, professors actually need to publish the site. So they would need to go to Site Info under Manage Access, and they have to click the Publish Site button. So one of our frustrations at Pepperdine is once the sites go up, and then the teachers all click their buttons and it's ready to go. Often they forget to hit Publish Site. It's kind of like a cell phone. Have you ever like hit the cell phone number and you're like trying to figure out why no one's talking? It's because you forgot to click, you know, the send button to get that number to go. So we do have everything, you know, just inside without being published. The teachers have to actually go in there and publish that site.
And in the new version, we actually developed the Publish Now feature, and it's now in 2.9. So if it's unpublished, above the menu, there'll be a little warning that says the site is unpublished. So we worked with our hosting partner, Longsight, and they contributed that to the product because we were on 2.6 and then 2.8 originally, but we got it into the 2.9 code. So.
What professors and students all love about Sakai, though, is that it's one hub where they can store everything. So for me and my students, I tell my students, and it's kind of fun because at the end of the semester, all the students, you know, they just know to go to Sakai for all our course resources, and I've basically become paperless using Sakai. But I had one course, you know, there's always one student in your course, right, that hasn't listened all semester, and at the end of the semester, you know, I have always posted all my resources online for my students, and one boy piped up and said, where do we find that document? And I didn't even have to respond. All the students said, dude, it's in Sakai, you know, like, and he felt really little because everyone knew that it was in the hub of our course, and he did not. So it's a great resource because it is one hub for all their materials, and the students know to just go there. So that's how we've gotten started in Sakai and what it looks like. And now I'm going to have my colleague Alan come and talk to you about how we came to choose Sakai.
So is anyone not already using Sakai and considering it, or does everybody already select Sakai? One person. Okay. So a few things went into the selection of Sakai. So in 2009, we didn't know anything about it. We found a partner, we put up a pilot site, but then we went to the conference to try to learn what this thing is. And we found that the community was not only inviting, but it was just so helpful. People that, you know, now the community is very rich with Duke and NYU and Columbia and all of these schools working together, Stanford, etc. It's a wonderful community, so we found that a really compelling element. We also found that, especially coming from Blackboard, which had a very similar structure, you know, left-hand nav, top bar, it was a pretty easy transition. Now, some of the labels, for instance, control panel is now site info or things like that. There was a learning curve in that space, but it was pretty easy to get across. And then it had a number of the core classroom management tools. It has more than people use. I mean, we're still seeing syllabus resources being the top 2 tools being used, that and announcements. But we're getting more and more traction in the other tools. And then finally, it was just came down to cost as well. There's no license fee for the thing. It's open source. We personally saved over $200,000 by moving away from the other tool and coming to Sakai. So we were able to do and enjoy a number of budget cuts, so budget savings. So I also wanted to mention, Stella already pointed it out, a key thing in adoption is to make sure your faculty know how to get help and understand how to use this tool. So originally, this was not a bright orange giant button. It was a little link that said go over here. But we're still surprised at the number of people who still don't notice the giant orange in-your-face big button claiming, where do I get help? So we still have, just like anybody, we still have some work to do getting that word out. We've actually just purchased some code, so what's now a static image will be a rotating banner. So when we have tutorials and other things, it'll actually refresh and change and be more dynamic. So that's our next stage, to try to draw the attention by adding motion and movement into the space. So we'll see how that goes. But this was also like an early iteration of how we did things. But then we did break these down, and by clustering them into areas, people at least had a little bit more context or attachment rather than a big old list of tools and not knowing what the tools are or context was. So adding some little iconography and putting textual labels was helpful. And at this point, do you have any questions about choosing or anything about kind of, we did a number of things. We did road shows to bring it to faculty. Before the selection, we actually sat down and went to every campus that we have, and we had individuals there for long periods of time. A lot of times we just sat in an empty room waiting for people if they came or not, But we made ourselves available. We surveyed, we originally enlisted 30 people to try it, but we made it completely enterprise-wide. Because a lot of times in pilots, they only allow you like a certain number of accounts, a certain number of things. Working with our partner, we calcified it so anybody at our entire institution could use it. So those 30 people, then suddenly we found out 90 professors are using it. We hadn't even talked to the 60 others. We didn't even know they were using it. They were just going in and trying it. So we had a real grassroots effort. So I do recommend an enterprise solution if you have the opportunity.
How many people did you, how many different platforms did you consider?
We looked at, we evaluated Desire to Learn, Moodle, Sakai. Canvas didn't exist at the time. Those were the main ones we were looking at as the non-Blackboard products pretty much at the time. At that time also, Blackboard bought Angel, so that was off the table for us. Those were the big players at the time. This is 2009. But I'd like Stella to come over and talk about some of her favorite tools.
So some of my favorite things in Sakai that I want to highlight as a faculty member that I use quite a bit, and I've heard mixed reviews about them, so I wanted to caution you about what you might hear as technologists and designers. Two of my favorite tools are Forms, and I'll explain why, and Dropbox, and I'll explain why as well. First, with Forms. So I have heard faculty say that they don't like to use Forms because they become cumbersome, they get too long, reading through them, grading them, that's all very difficult. But I'll explain why I love Forms and how I use them in my class, and hopefully that will help you teach your faculty how to use Forms. So I use Forums as a way to extend my class discussion. Because in my classes, I might not have enough time in a class to check for understanding for everybody and talk to each student. I might not have that kind of time. But I want to know what they're thinking. So let me give you an example. On the first day of class, so I teach an educational psychology class. And on the first day of class, I think it's really important for us to talk about first impressions and expectations. Like, you all have expectations of this presentation, and if you're going into a university classroom, you have an expectation, whether you realize it or not, of what that professor is going to look like and what you're going to experience, right? So you saw the picture of where we teach. We teach in Malibu, Southern California, and I'm sure you all have stereotypes about Malibu, and they're all true. And so I teach at Pepperdine University, where it's pretty monocultural, and it's a university. And so I think that there are some stereotypes that are linked to that as well. So typically students, I'm just going to say, walk into the classroom and they're expecting to see a male, older individual be their professor. And they walk in and I go, hello! And so I dress up like my mother on the first day of class. I role model my mother. She gave me a suit to wear that's like 8 sizes too big and has a big white collar, and I wear this obnoxiously bright scarf. It's got a very nice paisley print, and I tie my hair back and put on glasses, and I get up into everybody's face, and I get in their private space, and I just say, hello, it's very nice to meet you. Welcome to educational psychology. And I just go on in broken English for like 20 minutes, and they're just blown away. They're just freaked out, and I just try to make it as uncomfortable as possible. But they all understand what I'm saying, and I say, I'm very sorry, I have an accent, but I love teaching too much, and I love Jesus, and Pepperdine Christian University, I love Pepperdine. And I just go for 20 minutes. And most of my students are Caucasian, and most of them have never had an Asian professor. My background is that I'm Korean, born in Southern California, but first generation American. So I go on and talk about how I'm going to teach them a life lesson. And in that life lesson, they will learn how to treat other people, especially their student. Because not student fault if students smell or clothes not fit. It's not student fault. Student can still learn. Do you understand that? Students can still learn, even though they might not look like you, or smell like you, or talk like you. And then I say, and not everything like it seems. Not everything is like it seems. Like right now. And then I start disrobing or stripping in my Christian classroom. And yeah, exactly. Okay, and so I do this role play, and at that point there is the most awkward silence in my classroom, right? They're just stunned, or they start clapping. I've gotten clapping. They're just, you can actually hear them thinking. And I don't have enough time in that first class to have a full discussion about that, but I kind of leave them with that. And then I go to the forums, and there's actually an article called Lookism, and it relates to how students' stereotypical attitudes towards professors affect their learning and so forth. And I have them read that, and I have them read a story called 3 Letters from Teddy, about how a teacher put her stereotypes about children and how they learn upon this young student and how she was wrong. And then they read that, reflect on it, and I don't have time in class to see what they're thinking. So I go to forums, and I ask them to read those 2 articles and then list what they're thinking. And they're 1 paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs, but like you can see on this one, the first one, it's from a young man who says, I love Dr. Herb, and this is his forum response, where he basically says, it's the greatest role play I've ever seen, really opened my eyes to how I actually think and judge people without really knowing it. It's just a powerful way for me to connect with my students. Now, without forums, I could probably think of other ways I could tap into the students, but they can actually read each other's as well and feedback on each other's. And I just look to see that they did it, and then I can respond, and I just give them a credit or no credit. I don't judge the content of that. But I love forums because I can do that. I can just quickly take a pulse of my students, get some really important information, and then I just give them a credit, and then move on. but it's a great portal through Sakai where I can do that. Now, I think the faculty who are using forums incorrectly are frustrated with forums. But if you just think of it as a way to extend your classroom discussion, and you need to model for the students how long their responses you want them to be, because some might write a couple sentences, some write more, some write less. Model your expectation for the students. But forums has been really powerful for me, and I enjoy using it. So that's one of my favorite tools. As well as Dropbox. Now, we talked about Dropbox, and I'll tell you why I like Dropbox and how I'm going to use it differently. How I've used Dropbox in the last few years, I would say, is when students need to submit something, they submit it to their file, their Dropbox. I have to teach my students how to file their work because I have several units. So like I have a mini lesson unit or a reading activity unit or a research paper unit. So I have them make folders and then they drop them in those folders. Otherwise it becomes a long laundry list and I have to go through and sort them and that's not helpful. In the last few years I've used Dropbox. They upload their Word documents and I can just read them right there and then give them credit on Sakai. It's been very helpful, and I've been able to go paperless and just track changes through Microsoft Word and so forth. As I move forward using Sakai, this is like breaking news for Dr. Stella Herbs. As I move forward using Sakai, I'm actually not going to have them drop Word documents. I'm going to have them write in Google Docs and then just share links with me to Google Docs, and I'll tell you why. Because this worked for me for a long time and it was fine. But what happens with this is when they drop documents through Word, you have to open them, and then if you want to track changes or something, you basically have to save that document on your computer and then re-upload it. So it's not a best practice, it's a little more time consuming, but last semester I actually used Google Docs, and it was just great because it has a revision history and you don't have to save things to your computer. So going forward, if they need to share any files with me or videos, in teaching we do videos, Dropbox has a 200 megabyte file upload. So if something's under 200 megabytes, they can store all that there. And with teachers, we have lots of images and video files and so forth. They can store there for me to see. So that's helpful. But with Word tracking and so forth, it became a little cumbersome to save and all that. So I'll use Google Docs from now on. But I do have to say that resources is used a lot like Dropbox, and for teachers, the faculty will use resources. That's where we're going to put all our handouts and so forth. But I would advise faculty, if you're working in faculty, also to list those under folders. Like if they're doing a unit on cell division and they're a natural science person, put all their documents in one folder for cell division and then move on to the next unit, because otherwise it's just going to be one long list of documents and that's really difficult for people to see. Alan's going to share about a new feature that I will be using in redesigning my educational psychology course, which is the lessons tool.
I don't want to actually, because we're running out of time, I don't want to spend too much time, but has anyone seen or used the lessons tool? How do you envision yourselves using the tool?
Well, when we started training faculty, we trained them directly to use the lessons tool to get that look and feel that, as instructional designers thought it was a little bit more concise and easier to follow than sending students to resources. So we have them post all their documents either in that fashion like that, week 1, week 2, however it makes sense for their courses in that face-to-face. And then for online courses, we're using the lesson tool as the main delivery for the content. So since a lot of faculty were teaching both online, face-to-face, it also makes sense to introduce them to that tool and not have them kind of do one thing for one set of courses and something else for another set.
Yeah, we had a professor actually who, first time teaching in an online class, was always face-to-face. got introduced to this tool and now is applying the tool to the face-to-face classes because it's a great way to introduce the content and just organize it. So you actually have ability to design some elements rather than straight old resources, which is vanilla and boring and difficult. And you can organize it however you like. Here's a couple, looks and feels. You could, especially if you partner with an instructional designer or have a little bit of background, you can actually add a lot of flavor. You can also take advantage of free resources like, on Flickr, there's the Creative Commons area where you can use free images. Of course, you have to search ad infinitum to find an image you want, but at least you can freely use that as long as you cite or source it, depending on how a Creative Commons license is used. You can really flesh out and foster it. This one I wanted to show is, this was a sample I threw together for a professor. He wanted one page where all of the assignments were listed, but he also wanted the solutions listed to each assignment, but not to show the solution until the student has submitted the assignment. Well, through the lessons tool, you can use conditional release, and you can set different conditions depending on what it is. But here, I've got one page. Now, I'll warn you or tip you off if you're not already aware of this. If you want a one-page-fits-all, it's linear. So they have to finish assignment 1 before they can see the assignment 1 solution. But let's say they jump ahead to assignment 3. Well, they'll have to finish assignment 1, assignment 2, and assignment 3 before they can see the solution for assignment 3 if you do a one-page alignment. You can break it out of it by doing different subpages and having the solution at the bottom of each subpage. That way they can jump to assignment 3, and then once they've completed assignment 3, then the link to the solution becomes enabled or active on that page at that time. So these are some kind of like learning curve or planning or just thinking through what you need to do. But that was something, and so the asterisks simply mean that it's a required element, and then I have tied each of the sub, and I've used button versus link to further differentiate visually. The thing you really need to focus on is the assignment, and there's a solution as well, but do the assignment. So that's another way of using those types of design or display options. So it offers ability to structure, really easy now to embed media. Pretty much you throw any link at YouTube at it, it pretty much can interpret it on the fly now, especially the latest version of lessons. Previously you had to do like the full URL from the web link versus the short URL. Now it's pretty much, it'll interpret almost anything now, the latest version. Yeah.
Just to throw something out there, because we have this, because we're using the lessons tool heavily, and we do have a lot of media that we're embedding, a lot of YouTube videos and that. At some point in time, I want to say it was maybe 4 or 5 months ago, all of the browsers came up with
mixed media?
The mixed media, and that just threw us for a loop, because at first I was
all our links are broken.
I'm loading it, and it's not appearing on the page, and I'm loading it again, and finally I noticed that all these edit. And we do still have students that struggle with remembering that, and faculty who struggle with reminding students that you have to click whatever it is depending on the browser you're using. One thing I did find is that I use the embed.
If you use the embed code on YouTube, if you use the embed code on YouTube, it no longer actually has the HTTPS. So it just has the ref and then the URL, but it assumes or applies whatever HTTP the source is. So that's absolutely great. But otherwise, I think in the latest version, they're also interpreting on the fly. So if you put HTTP in there, the latest version of lesson will convert it to HTTPS for you automatically. But that doesn't mean the rich text editor does that. It means the option where you say embed media or add media. That's so in lessons that way versus the rich text editor. So those are two separate things. So yeah, add media will automatically interpret almost everything and put it the right way.
Sakai 10, that's
Sakai 10. So, and I think it's lessons 1.5. I think that's the version of lessons. But they're going to be syncing up lessons, so it'll be lessons 10 or whatever. They're going to align the numbering system very soon. But again, we're pretty much It's 1:45. We've reached the end. The last thing I want to say, I love the fact that you can contextually link to whatever activity. Here's this thing. Watch this video. Now click to this forum. Not then have to tell people separately, go to the left menu and then go to forums and then find this thing over here. You just go boop, right there. That's the forum I want you to do. And afterwards, click the back to lesson and you're still in the flow. The only thing I think we're struggling with is tests and quizzes. In order to get the grades in test and quizzes, they still need to have the test and quizzes in the left menu and go to test and quizzes to get feedback. I haven't quite figured that one out yet. But most of the other things are pretty good. Yes?
One thing about lessons is if the faculty imports lessons from previous,
Yes.
to make sure they check all the links and anything you're linking to the resources,
Yeah.
it'll link back to the old resources. So one thing that we've been telling our faculty is to maybe using their My Workspace resources
Yes.
as their database of stuff for
Yes.
all their classes, and then they can link from there instead of linking it and copying resources over and over and over and over again.
Either that or a project site, because a lot of times I like a project site because let's say the professor leaves,
Yeah.
that's assigned with the My Workspace. But if you do a project site that at least the department or whatever could have access to, then it has a life beyond that. But that's a great, or a blank course site, depending on how you do it. Well, we've run out of time, but we've got some gifts and prizes. So
Yeah, thanks everyone for attending this session. We know you have a lot of sessions to choose from, and we're glad you chose the best session. So to reward you, we have a couple of valuable prizes. So I'm going to pick two names. Here's the first one, Stephen. Stephen Wicker from Wake Forest. You may choose between a gift card to Starbucks or iTunes. So there's that. And then another one is Stacy. Stacy Zurich. So enjoy those and thank you all for coming.
Stacy will be able to warm up now.
That's right.
while not a gift card, I only have a handful of these, but if you like chocolates, the front row, because you were brave enough to be here in the front row, get some chocolate. And all of the mints, of course, are yours as well, if you want them. I might have a spare chocolate.
Tell the truth, Alan.
Yeah.
There was enough chocolate at the beginning for everyone at every table here.
I've got enough apple slices. If you want apple slices.
Talk myself out. I get over up that I let myself down. I tried so very hard not to lose it. I came up with a million excuses. I thought I would every possibility. I make it work so we can work out. I promise you can't get so much more. I just haven't met you yet. I can't see every possibility. can be so amazing. Anything in life is gonna change me. I can't see every single possibility. Someday I know it'll all turn out. I'll work to work it out. Promise you can. I'll get more than I get. Just haven't met you yet. I just haven't met you yet. Unless it can give you so much more than I get. Just haven't met you yet.
So our
In the back end.
11?
11, I think it's 11. So essentially, in edit tools, each of the tools will be broken into categories to begin with. And then they'll have a preview of what their menu will look like on the right-hand side.
You wouldn't really want to see that.
Yeah, I mean, they're not,
Yeah, okay. We don't right now actually visualize the document. So I think that's
And I think some of the things get shared between our sites because we're both long sites. And so this is how our lessons are. We break up into weeks, and then each lesson we have what's helpful is in there, and there's for a while, so you can break up the tabs. This is in each course.
yeah, or you create it in Photoshop.
This application is for actually painting I just other ones you have to do a little bit more research. And you can create a common search.
So it used to be
And actually, there's a lot of major photo stock repositories that are opening up. Like Getty is opening up, and some other places. Another big everything you can want to do more image search or filter.
That's here at the last I'd love to show like one or two sites showcase. I have my sites, but I'd love to see showcase. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Get you up there, I'll be holding you.